I am going to call this meeting, this work session of the Eugene 4J School Board to order. We are meeting to get an update from the Alma Advisory Group about our superintendent's search. It is February 9th at 5:35. And we are all meeting on Zoom virtually, and we have 5 board members present and 2 that could not be here tonight. So we have Mary Walston, Laura O'Rourke, Maya Rabasa, Martina Shabram, and Judy Newman. So we have the Alma Advisory Group consultants here. I'm going to turn the meeting over. Oh, welcome, Sylvia. Great. We have Monica Rosen and Sylvia Flowers and Brian Lynn. So welcome tonight, and we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Monica here. Thrilled to see you all and looking forward to tonight's conversation. I want to share as we're getting started. Originally, our plan was to share with you all the results of our community engagement to date. You know, we've been reflecting at the Alma team on the events of the past few weeks, and before we can really delve into and make sense of the community feedback and what it means for the profile of the role, we think we really need to just address what's occurring with the board and the impact we think it's going to have on the search. So that's really what I'm going to be talking about today, and happy to have a conversation with you all once I share what I have. So, you know, I have to start by saying that we at Alma have been so moved and inspired by the vibrant community in Eugene 4J. Every person we've met, everyone we've had the opportunity to speak with has been passionate, honest, and dedicated to a bright future for 4J students, no doubt about it. And people have been just so committed. And we've enjoyed working with the board as well. Each and every one of you has engaged in this process in really thoughtful and open ways. You know, it's clear to us that you each desire a strong and talented leader to spearhead the district into its next chapter. Hiring a superintendent, as you all know, is the single most important job that a Board of Education has to do. Finding your next leader and finding the right leader will have a positive impact for students and staff and for the community for years to come. In working with the board and in engaging with the community and following the press and the things that are occurring, it's really clear that before you can really begin your search in earnest, you must address matters of trust and cohesiveness among each other. As stated in a recent letter to the board can provide the leadership necessary to guide the district if it refocuses and commits to respecting the opinions of one another. You know, we understand that no community is a monolith and no board is either. And in fact, your diverse points of view are very important. Diverse teams and diverse thinking help leadership teams make better decisions. So where your points of view differ, we see those as potential strengths in your ability to lead the district forward. But right now, as a group, you know, what the Alma team, what I will say is that the Alma team is so committed to finding a great leader for the district. And given the things that are occurring in terms of trust and relatedness on the board, it will be hard to find strong leaders for the district. The landscape isn't there right now. And in our point of view, in order to really attract a strong and talented pool to 4J, this board has to demonstrate to the community to acknowledge where the challenges are, as each of you have done, as each of you did during our anti-bias training, to acknowledge where the challenges are and to do some real work to reach shared rules of engagement, shared ways of working together, so that the next superintendent and anyone who considers this role knows this is a board that is making big moves to work together in healthier ways to help accelerate the work for the district. And we really feel that potential candidates really need to see authentic signs of progress, reaching across lines of differences on the board, and engaging in healthier ways to move forward. So we just feel at this point where we are really this is in the critical path of finding your best next leader. It's something we think the board needs to address immediately. And the AMA team is ready and able to support you in doing that work. That is a core expertise of ours, and we would be honored to partner with you on that. But we just feel it's so critical to name this right now and to give you the opportunity to respond, but to share. We really think that this process will be insurmountable without a real without a real shift in the board members' relationships with each other and with the staff of the district.
Any questions or comments for Monica or anyone else on the team? Responses, thoughts? Maya.
I appreciate I appreciate all these words. I think that you're not only right about the impact of this on a superintendent search, it impacts all of our decision making down to the tiniest of details. So I welcome the challenge and the support that you're offering, and I anticipate it will be difficult work, but whatever that expression is about, like the good things don't come that are easy, or that I don't think that the level of difficulty is reason for us to continue to avoid it or hope that it just goes away, because hoping isn't what gets work done.
Thank you. Others? I just want to say that I appreciate your honesty and directness about this topic. I think it is something we have to very seriously consider and make plans for, and for your offer about helping move forward. I'd be anxious to hear, or interested to hear, your thoughts about that. But I think it is true. I think until we can figure this out, it would be very hard to ask someone to step into this situation in any way. Martina.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Judy and Maya. And Monica, I guess I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question to you, or maybe this is a question to anyone else on your team, sort of what you think would be, what kinds of resources or what kinds of support do you think from your outsider's perspective would be, seems to you like a good next step? I know we're all working on that very intently here, and have been scheduling trainings and going through all of that, but we're stuck inside of the dynamic, and you have this wonderful perspective from the outside and from having connected with the community in such an intense way, and so I'm curious about what insight that has given you, and how you would bring your expertise to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. You know, we work with leadership teams and have worked with leadership teams at all varying stages of their development and shared identity and shared sense of purpose and working with each other. And, you know, I think we just have to start with that. Like, everyone is a human being in the space, and everyone comes to the board with their particular vision and what they're excited to contribute to the district. You know, what I have found most helpful for leadership teams that are in this phase of forming is to really have dedicated time away from the space and away from the work, away from any of deliberations or decision making, just to talk about who you are as a team. And in order to do that, I would recommend 2 days of, like, 2 dedicated days together, to really not to do work, just to really get clear on how you all want to do your collective work for the district, and what you're hoping for, what each of you needs in order to participate well with each other, and really to come up with rules of engagement, shared agreements around what we do in our meetings, outside of our meetings, before and after our meetings, and also, you know, what we see as the role of the board. You know, what is your shared agreement and understanding about what each of you is here to do, and how you work together to do that. So I have found that 2 full days you can accomplish so much in 2 full days. That's just the beginning. You have work that's going to go beyond the superintendent search. There's no doubt about it. But to begin with those shared agreements, and then to have some routine of maybe a monthly or whatever the frequency needs to be, to check back on, are we living up to our agreements or not? So that's what I would recommend, just to get started. My advice as well is, you know, as three of you at least, but I know from our last conversation, there was wide consensus on the board that there's difficulty, and that you all agree you need to work on it. I think the public acknowledgement of of where you see that you are and where you want to go as a board will be an incredible and important first step. So let me pause there. I see Laurel's hand is raised.
Laurel, you're muted.
Well, I find that it's concerning because my role on the board is pretty much surviving, just being a new Black entity on the board that points out what is happening in the district and at the board. So what I hear you saying is my existing and pointing out the structural racism is part of the problem. And I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to, that's why I was elected. We have so many kids that go unheard, and they look a lot like me many times. And it's absolutely embedded in our system, and it's still happening. The interim superintendent just appointed somebody to be the assistant superintendent from the outside, and undermines the whole process that we're doing here. And we're concerned, and we're wondering, and there's zero transparency. So it's not just your board, it's a whole of a system. But I refuse to be labeled as like a troublemaker, because I'm saying I exist, I matter, I will not be silenced, and I do it with my voice to say, I talk about structural racism. Am I calling people names? Am I just being mean for mean's sake? No. I'm doing that good trouble because it needs to happen here. It's really sad here what's happening. And it needs to, we had a chance to hire somebody for an executive role in our organization, and they appointed somebody. We had a chance to bring equity, real equity, and do that work that we talk about, but it's all performative. So I want it to be different. I work well. My job every day is bringing people together, getting them to collaborate, and showing them the why. My fellow board members don't want to know my why. They want me to shut up. They don't. It makes me sad. But also I'm going to keep doing this because that's what I've been asked to do. That's why I was elected until I'm not here. And believe me, if they don't elect me again, I am not going to shed one tear because I am doing what I was meant to do. But also I've been attacked and vilified the entire time, and I have never said anything to hurt anybody. I've only spoke truth. And the structural racism, I mean, I know it's everywhere, but I know you guys can see it because I'm dealing with 3% of people that look like me in this whole area. If I'm lucky on a good day, when the college is in town, when the university's in town, you know, it's frustrating, but I'm also from here and I love Oregon. And I believe there's something here worth fighting for. I went to these schools and I love them. And though I was policed and I was watched, and I realized that, and I internalized it, I think we have things we can change, and we can change what's happening here. But it bothers me that you mentioned none of that, even though I mentioned it. And I also, in that meeting we were in, you did not, you said, please speak freely. But when people do that and then they're attacked for talking about real racism that they have to deal with, I felt I undermined completely because I don't have the power there. So that you're saying all this and you can't help us right now, but you don't mention the racism, what's been the structural racism, and what I mentioned and everything that was going on means you're doing the whitewashing as well. And I just really makes me sad.
Yeah, so Laurel, thank you for sharing that. And I want to clarify a couple of things. It's really important. The first thing is, I want you to bring your full self to your board work. So I don't want anyone to interpret what I'm saying that anyone's a troublemaker, that anyone needs to stop what they're doing or saying or feeling, or your purpose for being on the board. All those things are super important. The reality is that this is a board that has to work as one unified body. And if you are all against each other, you can't move the district forward. So I'm not saying one point of view is right or wrong. I'm not. This is really about how as a team you work together. And where is that shared understanding of how everyone's voice is heard and valued? Where is that today? And how do we make decisions about what matters most and our role as a board versus the role of the staff, and how we support both? And those things are not clear right now. So I'm really just commenting on the board. I'm not commenting on the state of the district or the points of view of different board members. I'm really commenting on what is the work this board needs to do to be ready to attract a strong leader that is committed to equity, because I know what you're passionate about completely, and I share your passion for that. And it will be difficult to find a bold leader for the district that's committed to the racial equity you seek, to dismantling systems that may be that are inherently racist, created the results that you have, if they feel that they have a board that can't stand together or help and support the work that needs to be done. And I'm just telling you, because, you know, superintendents and potential superintendents will say, the board is the partner of the superintendent in a lot of ways. And if the board is not functioning well, nothing can get done. No agenda can get done. So I'm not trying to whitewash anything. I'm just telling you the fact that the way I see it right now is that this group of people, each of which has their own perspective and their own ways of engaging in this work, you have to find a shared way of working together. And it's okay if people have different points of view. Like I said, the different points of view help you make better decisions, but all the points of view have to be valued and respected. And then the board makes their decision, and that piece doesn't feel there right now. And the trust between board members, and I'm not saying everyone or whatever, but that trust piece is problematic in a way that hinders your ability to have the kind of discussion, Laurel, that I think you want to have. And I'm not saying you're causing that. I'm saying this is everyone on the board's work, not one person's work. So that I just wanted to, that's what I wanted to say. Does that resonate with you, Laurel? Does that make sense?
I think, yes. And I mean, I hear you and I hear what you're saying. I don't, and I see the same thing. I wish I could be heard and my voice could be valued. And it will not only dismiss, but also people try to get me in trouble. So I want it to work. I mean, that's my nature, to make things work. I think we absolutely have the ability, and I always work on the premise of hope and belief that things can happen. I think there's a lot of structures here that, I have said this in meetings, the culture has to change to meet that there's new board members, and that we don't think exactly alike. We're not asking them to break, we're asking them to bend.
And I would say, I don't expect all board members to think alike. Board members are elected, they represent their constituency, they came to the board for different reasons. We've had the opportunity to speak with each board member one-on-one, and each one of you has a really compelling lived experience that brings you here today. And, it's the collective genius when everyone comes together, right? That helps make better decisions. And so, I think the work that needs to happen is both internal and external. It's how do I, engage as a board member, and what are all of our shared agreements around how we engage with each other. And I think if you do that work, you'll get to the place where everyone does feel heard and valued, and where you're clear on the decisions and the things you're moving forward together on, and how you're going to go about doing that. And our point in this, our seat in this, is really in terms of, wanting to support attracting a great leader, and recognizing that this interferes with that in a pretty big way. Maya?
So I'll apologize ahead of time because I'm not sure as eloquent as I could possibly be, but it feels as though we hear what you just said a lot, and I accept it as truth. But it feels as though we've been caught almost in a game of chicken, shall we say, where folks are waiting for someone else to give. And I think one of the unfortunate things is that when we came together as a new board, that we didn't take the time to just be people together who are just people and not necessarily board members. Anytime I've ever had the chance to facilitate a new group coming together and envision it as a burgeoning community, it has been important to spend a lot of time building that community, because you can't be community until it's built. And we've been running full speed ahead with an artificial sense of community, and with really strong community-minded individuals, but with very misunderstood notions of what we consider the most essential components of community as we come into this space together. And so it feels as though, and I'll just say it again, it feels as though so many of the things that could be spoken or left unspoken, because sometimes it's easier and more appealing to play the waiting game and to wait out someone, or to continue along as has always continued, hoping that someone else will shift. And as a new board member, I feel that a lot, in the sense of, some of my most, the interactions that I find most successful, when I think about the word that I would use about how I was received, it's not valued, it's tolerated. And that to me is a litmus test that doesn't lead to success. People need to feel more than, tolerance is what, like 1982, and we're like 40 years later. And that's what I'm finding myself feeling when I'm like, well, that wasn't so bad. I feel like I was tolerated. And that's really difficult to then find myself in a position where I want to give even more, because I feel really vulnerable about how I'm going to be continued to be received. And so that's just kind of what I am feeling, listening to what Laurel has to say, and thinking about the work that we have is just, it's kind of like the silence game that my kids play, like who's going to win by waiting the longest. And that's in that game, nobody ends up winning. Somebody usually ends up pinching the other person to get them to holler and lose the game. And so yeah, I'm lamenting that loss of community building that we needed to do at the beginning. And I'm curious how we might incorporate that midstream, when we're not just midstream, but we're like needing to sprint, when sprinting isn't necessarily the right way to do this work. By necessity, we have to be sprinting. So I don't know. I welcome anybody's suggestions on how to take that on in the midst of COVID, when we can't sit around and talk about our favorite stuffed animal from childhood or whatever it is that will bond us.
Yeah, I agree with you, Maya, that and what I would say around the community building is it's reaching a sense of shared identity as a group, like who we are as the Board of Education, and what is the identity we all share as a part of that. So I think that's an incredibly important part of the community building that really needs to happen right now. It feels urgent to do that work so that you can get to a place of healthier discourse and the ability to hear each other and make good decisions and move your work forward, make good decisions together. So thank you for that. Judy?
The way you express that, both of you, the community building makes a lot of sense, because we are a new community. Everything is different when people leave and people come, and it was a misstep, and I don't know how to create that. So I think I interpreted some of what the idea of stepping back and taking this time would include that, because I don't know that, knowing what really motivates people and makes people passionate about the work they're doing, which I think we've all acknowledged every individual on this board has, takes some listening and time. And how, just even recognizing how voices don't feel welcome or heard, really specifically when I know in my heart and being, I want everyone's voice to be heard. I don't really, and so learning how to do that better in a way that is, it really does communicate that or allow that is something I know I would like to learn. So.
Thanks so much, Judy. And I appreciate your both acknowledging the sentiment of not feeling valued and reflecting on your own that whether you want to or not, as a member of the group, there's a way you're contributing to that, and you want to reflect on how you can play a part in also mitigating that. And I think that reflect both the sharing of personal experience, but also the reflection of where the give is on each individual's part, right? Or where's the place where we come together. Each person has to bring something to that as well. So yeah. Thank you. So I know this wasn't the conversation we were planning to have. I think it's the conversation we needed to have. And I'm really open on next steps and, what is the right thing to do from here. I know there's some board members who couldn't be here this evening. So Judy, I'm just wondering what you see as a good next step from here.
Well, I'd like to hear people's feelings. And I got a text from Mary. Her camera's off only because she had to do something related to her health situation, not that she was trying to check out of the meeting. So I just want to say that. I guess where people are with next steps, it seems like the recommendation from our consultants that are helping us with this search is to find some time that we can work with you about this. And just, we did have a conversation with the general counsel for the district to see how that could happen and if we could do that as a board, which I think Monica really recommended, and I really agree. It would, not doing that in a really public meeting makes sense. So we actually could work on our communication. So I think there are some ways that we could make that happen. And with her advice about rules, it's about, as you say, communication and rules of engagement, not about the superintendent's search or this issue or that issue. So it seems to me that's where we are, and we've been talking about it. We've been looking, my recommendation was a suite of things, and maybe this is really where we start. But I don't know how others feel. Is there anyone that wouldn't be, Martina?
I guess the question that I have is maybe again for Monica. I think a couple folks have acknowledged tonight that like doing this work and also existing within like an artificial but like very real time constraint really doesn't, like those two things don't really match, right? Like speed reading our way through these things isn't incredibly functional. And also, we're a volunteer board who all have lives, and finding time is getting increasingly challenging with the amount that we're doing. And And so I'm having a little bit of a hard time just like figuring out how to square those two things and how to add that together. And so I guess one of the things that is kind of like lurking in the back of my mind is like, what is the point at which these things are going to take long enough to like severely hamper our ability to continue recruiting now? And like, what's really the breaking point for when working towards hiring a permanent superintendent this year is no longer functional? And I'm not saying that I think that's going to happen. I'm saying that I feel like I kind of need to know like what's the outside edge, because this is also a process that happens in general on a kind of like normative structured calendar that is shared by, you know, many people. Like lots of school districts are doing this on the same calendar. And so I am just recognizing that if all of a sudden it's August, which I'm not saying it will be, but if it's August and we're still recruiting, that's not that's not for the coming school year. So I'm kind of just needing a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of a calendar check. I don't even know what I'm asking.
No, it's a fair question, and I completely understand that. And it's a little hard for me to say. I think the thing is, you know, it is incredibly difficult to recruit any leader to come to a district where the board seems dysfunctional. And so my professional advice is that you've got to show that you're working on it and you're making real moves and you're getting better, and that people can see that in your interactions with each other during board meetings and otherwise. So to me, I think that's like the most urgent thing right now. And I would say it's important enough to try to find the time as soon as possible. And then, you know, and then I would recommend there's some sort of a public statement about where you see yourselves and what the path is, because it's not an overnight path. It's not, it's going, as I said earlier, it's going to continue beyond the time of the search itself. And I don't think candidates need to see that you're like, got it all together. They just need to see you're working on it and that you're making progress and that you understand the impact it has on the superintendent's role. And you're clear on how you support your superintendent when they come in. So I think that's worth taking a couple weeks, even a month to sort out. And then, you know, and then picking up the search in earnest once that progress is really demonstrated to people who might be interested in Eugene 4J. In terms of timing, just to answer that question as concretely as I can, you know, I think what we would be looking at is depending on the progress. So we have to take it one step at a time, but assuming we make good progress and things are in a better place, I would say we're looking at probably starting to interview the board interacting with applicants somewhere around early April. And you might be sort of back towards end of April to early May to be having finalist conversations. Is that late? It's a little late, but it's not insurmountable. And I think it's worth it to get the right candidate for your district. So that's what I'd say on that. So I don't see it August unless something's gone terribly wrong. And if something goes terribly wrong, you'll know, and you can make your decision to pause and wait, you know, figure out, do we need an interim for another year? You know, you can make those decisions then, but that's the way I see it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the delicacy that you that you answered that with, and I know it was kind of an impossible question, and I appreciate you you know, working your way through it. Yeah, I want to make it really clear that when I, you know, and I don't think that you were implying this, but I want to still say it out loud when I say that, you know, that the time pressure is there. It's not because I don't want to make time, but because we're just running up against like the very real like exigencies of literal number of days, literal number of hours. outside of the fact that, many of us I work over 40 hours a week typically at my job. And those are things that are shared by a lot of, many folks work or have other duties. So that's really why I bring that up. And I appreciate what you said also about maybe one of the most important things being demonstrating the commitment, right? So not getting to the finish line. Is there ever a finish line? But really showing that we're invested and involved in, to continue the metaphor, running the race together. And I am governed by a board in my day job, and I can certainly say that I would feel deep pause if I were watching my board struggle the way that we are. And I think it's worthwhile to acknowledge that.
Thanks so much, Martina. Mary, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'm really reluctant to say anything, given who's on the call. I can see that who the attendees are, and some of them are the people that have written to me privately and written to the board and called for my resignation. So, but I'm going to say this anyway, because I feel like I need to speak my truth. And I've consistently said this, and I've said it not only with the 2 new board members that came on in July, but previous new board members. I remember having the conversation with Judy when she came on the board, and the same with Evangelina. As I said, I want you to succeed, because when you succeed, we all succeed as a group. And I remember having that conversation with you, Maya, when you wanted my endorsement, which I gave to you, and having that conversation. And then also with Laurel back in April, when they basically had no opposition. So it was apparent to me they were going to win the election. And I said then, I'm more than happy to share what I've learned. And I can see how that might have come across as patronizing, but that was never my intent. My intent was to have us work together as a board, as individuals, with differing points of view. And in fact, last time when I was board chair before, I implemented the board mentorship, where a new board member would be the mentee of a more experienced board member. And I thought that was helpful. But anyway, that's not where we are now. And I do regret, I regret that I wasn't available to come to the meetings in July and early August. I was really quite ill and couldn't do it. So I regret that, and regret that I didn't have the opportunity, and I didn't come in person when I did attend the board meetings. I do regret that we didn't get a chance to have that social interaction and just getting to know us. And it's too bad it wasn't built in to some of the work we did way back in August. And that's all I'm going to say, because I'm afraid if I say much more, I will receive another pack of rather nasty emails. Thank you.
Maya?
Okay. So one of the things that I would like to call on us to also do is to take command of the narrative around our board. And I'm not trying to take issue with you using the word dysfunctional, but we hear that word a lot. And yet we've done a lot this year that has been pretty significant and has really encouraged a whole lot of members of our community. We've also had meetings where we've gone through them and every single decision is made unanimously. And those moments aren't being brought into the narrative of this board. And we have meetings where we zip through things, and we have a lot of successful moments. And we also have some really difficult moments. And I think that the difficult moments are also what will ultimately lead to us being that that collection of diverse people who can bring us into a place where each decision is incredibly rich. And I'm not saying that we're doing it perfectly now at all. I leave a lot of meetings feeling really a lot of ease. But I do think that we need to reconsider how we see ourselves and how we present ourselves to the community, and that we need to take pause and celebrate the moments when we actually work together. And we often do when something happens quickly, and I appreciate that, and it's fun, and it's like, yay, we did that really fast. But also, you know, when we can move through things and hear each other and get to places. I have, you know, a bi-weekly meeting with the superintendent search subcommittee, where I think by and large, everything that we discuss, we ultimately agree on, and the interactions are very fruitful, and those aren't the big moments of the board, but they are like crucial elements of the board. I mean, they're the kind of things, they're the little things that make up the big picture, and that's what it's up to us to make sure the community knows that those things are also happening. And I also think that maybe it's because I was raised by a philosopher, and my dinner table discussions were very contentious. But I think that disagreeing and working through things, I think those are important for us, and I don't want to define those as being the problems. I see a lot of times where, you know, you can watch it on people's faces thanks to the fact that we're on Zoom and we can actually see each other up in each other's faces, but you can see like the gears shifting, and people coming in one place and then, like, you know, a head tilt and like okay. And those wouldn't happen if we just jumped right away. And so I think that reclaiming of the narrative could also help with this public perception of us, and that whole question of attracting a superintendent is, you know, attracting someone who wants a board that is involved, and not just a board who's there to say, you know, whatever you say, but also a board that listens, and a board that shows the ability to be influenced, and the ability to influence based on different perspectives and expertise, and yeah, and I feel like a lot of our, for lack of a better word, reputation got away from us, and we didn't take that narrative by the reins and drive it the way that we could have and still can. And I want to encourage us to just look at us, and instead of looking at us and thinking, what are all the terrible things about us, think about what are we doing well, and really start with that to be able to move forward. I have a board mentor. I don't know if anybody else does, but Alicia and I meet, you know, mostly by Zoom, but we've had some 3-hour-long coffee meetings more than not. And you know, those things matter. I'm with Mary. I think that's a great program, but I also think that what it does is it allows me to look through these Zoom screens and see another human who I know something about her because we've spent time, but it also allows me to just see how she thinks and how she works, and to recognize that there's places where we overlap and places where we don't, and places where we might. And so, yeah, mostly I just think it's really important that we drive the narrative of what this board is and how this board should be perceived. And not because we're being disingenuous, because nobody gets fooled by that. Everybody, you know, the only people that get fooled by disingenuous are the people that are presenting disingenuous. They're like, oh yeah, everybody believes it. We don't need to do that.
Laurel?
I do. I also take, well, not also, but I take exception to the word dysfunctional. I mean, your team wouldn't be here if we were dysfunctional. I mean, I liked how Maya talked about disagreements, because it's at points, people conceive disagreement as being dysfunctional, but really on a board, we have to be able to present a different framework and that other people hear it. So I've had other board members say, oh, I haven't heard it that way. Alicia and Martina have said that during the board meeting, like, oh, I'm, so we actually have quite a few board members that work really well together, really well. I would like to understand what you see as dysfunctional and why you feel that you can't go forward with the process, and what you have seen exactly that says you can't do this work.
Yeah, I think it's what I shared at the beginning. That's how I started.
But those were all like ideas, but they weren't like instances where you said it was not working. And I just don't, I think it's one thing to be afraid it may be bad, but it's not, but you can't, on that premise, it's not saying that it is bad.
So
Because
I'm acknowledging everything that I think just about every board member has acknowledged. And it's that as a group, there are issues with the way you engage with each other, where there's organizational trust and shared agreements of how you interact with each other. Those things are not strong enough today. And the way they're appearing in public meetings, it affects your ability to attract a strong superintendent. And you have community members sharing that. It's coming out in different ways. And so what I'm saying is, if you want to attract a leader and you all agree there's work to be done, then it's important to acknowledge that publicly and to do that work soon. And that as that work is being done and as the community is seeing where things are improving, that so too will come a lot more interest, because this is a wonderful community. It's a wonderful school system that I think lots of people would want to join. But any superintendent, any candidate for the superintendency, the first question is, tell me about the board. And the first thing they're going to do is see the recorded board meetings that have gone well and haven't gone well. And I think I think you all, the last time we were together, acknowledged that enough, I think that's really just the issue. I mean, if you have yourself as a board member saying your voice is not valued, not only that, you're saying people want you to go away. That's what you said at the beginning.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
But not everyone, and it doesn't stop me. I mean, that's
but it
like
affects
a Tuesday for somebody like me.
Yeah, so I think those dynamics influence and affect the board's ability to really get work done. Now, you might disagree, but my point is simply that that's the work that needs to happen now, and that doing that work will help you attract stronger leaders that share your values and your commitment for your students.
And so there's no way we're going to remove structural racism in the next month from the board and the district and the political maneuvering and all these things that are in the background, which is part of what you're talking about. There's no way that's going to leave. So how do you quantify that it's ready, that it's time? Because I don't see that everything, I don't see this, I've never seen these things change. I see the needle move in small increments, but I don't see what you're talking about happen. So are you planning to still fulfill the contract, or I'm just confused to understand where we are? Because it sounds like, I don't know, I can't tell. I mean, you said something about April, but also you said, well, we can't do it well, you guys are like this. And I don't think there's a magic fix in a month. I think we're going to have to, and also during COVID, everything is harder. So I was so excited to have your voice here, and I fought for it in the board meetings and then while we were talking about it, because I really wanted to have a different view than what we normally would get in this process. And but I'm just so disheartened that you guys are saying that it can't be done right now, because something that won't be fixed in a month must be fixed. It just.
Yeah, so I just want to be really clear. This is about how you all work together as a Board of Education. That's what needs to be talked about. That's what needs to be figured out. And you can choose to move forward with the search and do nothing about that. What we're telling you is it has an impact on who you can attract and who's going to be interested and willing to pursue this role. And we want you to be in a place where everyone's clamoring to get here. That's our commitment, right? Is to get the best leader here. And so we're telling you that this is the work that needs to be done. And I'll repeat again, it's not work that's done overnight. It begins now as soon as possible. And it's going to go on well beyond the work of the superintendent search. So I don't see this as something that's going to get fixed. And I never said that. But, you know, and it's your choice as a board. You've got to decide, is there a problem or not? And what is that? And what are we willing to do about it? So, you know, I'm being honest with you. I'm not here to waste your time, and I'm not here to do a job just to say I did it and get a check. I'm here to tell you this is what's important. I know you all want a great leader, and this is standing in the way of that. And that's where we are. And I get it that there are times when the group works well together. I totally appreciate that. And by the way, I also have said a few times tonight, I don't think the differences in viewpoints are the problem. It's really about together, you know, your sense of being all part of one unified group. And it's about, you know, how you all come to understand better the ways in which you want to work together and engage with each other around the work. And so that's what I see as what's really needed.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
That's
thanks.
helpful.
Judy?
Well, thank you. I really just wanted to say, I'm really glad, Maya, you acknowledged that. I mean, I think we're not saying we haven't had some successes, and we have had a lot of them. But I also, and I'm in agreement that it's not the differences of opinion. It's really how we're able to, I think we could do better learning from each other in a different way. It sometimes has been very, I just think we have an opportunity to learn more from each other and the differences, and we're taking because of our own. Well, I mean, I'm just going to use the example because you said this, you know, again, Laurel, that people are trying to get rid of you. I don't know if anyone's trying to get rid of you. I mean, I know that, but to feel that way, maybe people are trying to get rid of me or someone else, but how can we all show up if that's what we're feeling from each other? And somehow we have to get beyond that and really believe each other to say, we have voices. These are voices that represent our community and all different parts of our community. And how do we actually make that work? And that's so it's upsetting to me that we're each thinking that someone isn't wanting to listen to us or get rid of it. There's that piece. And then I think you also mentioned in your comments, you know, it's how we work together, but it's also how we interact with our staff. You know, we don't necessarily agree with everything our staff is doing or want it, but we're in a position of authority and leadership in the district. And I think we have, you know, how we make those things known and how we interact and work with our staff to move the district together, because we can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. We're sort of a team in this, and we're not going to all agree there either, but we got to figure that piece out too.
So I think there's a decision to be made about whether or not the board wants to take steps forward and what those steps might be. So, you know, I'm not sure if you would like us to step away so you can have that conversation, or if you feel you can have that conversation with several board members missing. Just wondering how best to make the determination of what to do now. Martina?
Yeah, you just sort of brought forward what I was going to say, which is that I'm glad that we took the time that we had tonight to have this conversation, even amongst just the 5 of us. And I also don't feel like we can make really concrete decisions without it being all 7 of us, which is really hard. It's hard, right? And I don't know exactly how we're gonna. I don't know when we're gonna do that. I don't know how. I don't know what like the timeline is for getting all 7 of us together to have those conversations. But I just, if the purpose here is to function better as a body of 7, then 5 of those 7 can't be the ones making that decision.
Judy?
I agree with that. It seems like the next time we're able to gather is on the 16th. And we'll be having an executive session. Somehow we're going to have to work in this conversation. And our 2 board members who aren't here tonight, we're going to ask them to listen to this recording. I think it's important they get this conversation firsthand, you know, have a chance to weigh in when we see them. And I just had one other thought that I meant to bring up before about the structural racism. You're right, we're not going to change that. We could chip away on it and really decide as a board that's a focus. And maybe we want to all work alongside each other. And it's not just up to 1 board member or 2 board members to have to call that out. But that's going to be deep policy work and really looking at things as we go forward. So, you know, I don't know what the approach could be or how we could as a group powerfully look at that. But I think you could have a board of 7 people that would want to figure out a plan how to do that, whether it's policy review or whatever. But I just wanted to follow up on that thought too.
Mary?
Thank you. Being a longtime public administrator and bureaucrat, I always like to look ahead and think about, well, what would happen if? And I hear you saying that, you know, we're probably not in the space, which I agree with you, to have a vibrant, fruitful search at this point. But I would point out that we need some stability for our staff, and I think that is that just creates one more question mark for everyone. The recent concern over hiring is, I think that'll play into this too. And on the other hand, I know that we all want to work on which is what I was trying to express about a month ago, the systemic racism that I know we have in our system and the system in general. I do think, to Maya's point, that, you know, we've made some great progress. The report we had from Sea Change just last week, I thought was very helpful and very informative. And I think we're moving in the right direction, but we're not gonna change it overnight. And I hope we can all figure out how to work together and work with our staff, because they're the ones that do the work. Work with our staff in terms of they're respecting their professional opinions, respecting their integrity to move forward as a team. Because Judy, we are a team. That's one of the first lines in our working agreements. We're a team with the superintendent, and the superintendent is head of the staff that works for us on our behalf. So just trying to be practical here with moving this out, and what are we going to do if it does take another 2 or 3 months.
Laurel?
I feel that we're getting things done. We're moving forward. I think there's a lot of politics that perhaps you've heard, but things are happening. So I feel to go forward and not to pause. I mean, I do agree with Mary that this leaves a lot more things up in the air to kind of pause and say, oh, let's figure out another time when this works or something. We have a lot of people that actually have hope right now that didn't have it before for our district. And then you're probably not hearing their voices as much, but we're hearing them and it's exciting. And they're participating more. And they're knowing that I get messages weekly about things where people are like, I've never felt heard. My kid isn't seen, and it's really hard. And they have people on the board that listen and try to figure out what to do with that. I would say that as a remark, Judy, for how I keep hearing how we treat staff, but disagreement when I get here was considered an attack. So it's not, I have to be able to disagree with the discourse. If I have a whole body of people who are saying that's not how it's working, but it was treated as an attack, and it wasn't put in the papers that I attacked staff, and it wasn't. My exact words were that we have to be very careful because seasoned educators are telling us different than what you're saying. That was my attack. So I really would love to just go forward because I believe it could happen. I think what you said is very important, and I'm not disregarding it. I'm not saying we should just forget everything you said and go forward. I'm saying we've heard it. Other board members not here will hear it, and I guess we'll be deciding on it on the 16th. But my vote is to continue forward because the work I do every day is hard, but hard work is some of the most worthy work to do. It's pretty, I get to help people every day, and that's pretty awesome. And so we're doing that on the board. We're working to help our students and staff and educators and everybody feel like, they're being heard, and I think we're all doing it in our own ways. And I feel like we can go forward, and we've done a lot and we can do more. So that's my vote.
Go ahead, Judy.
So I just wanted to ask Laurel to follow up. So I don't know that we're making a decision to stop the search. Is it something that you would be willing to do, is to do a day or two time together soon?
Are you renting a house at the coast?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it should be pleasant for all of us.
It should be pleasant for all of us, and that is a really good idea for sure. So anyhow, I guess I'm asking, is it either or if I don't think we're making a decision tonight to suspend the search. I don't think we're there, but or stop the search. But I think we're saying that I think the advice we're getting is this would be a good first step and see where it goes, and it might really help us really take a giant step forward as a group, I think. So I don't want to make the decision to stop the search with this. Yeah.
I mean, I heard a question in there, and I would say yes, but I would want to see who we be asking to be part of the facilitation of this. I wouldn't want to have that sprung on me. And so would it be Alma, or would we have somebody locally who does this work? I would really like to know that, somebody who is really good at keeping, the conversation where it needs to be, is part of this work.
I think what I heard was an offer from Alma to do it, and this is something that they do and do well. And it really, in a way, relates to our ability to be successful. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think that's what I heard.
We have a lovely coast. And you will like it. It's gorgeous. So
I'm excited to see it. Go ahead, Maya.
I hear Laurel giggling when she talks about the coast, and whether it's the coast or not, I do want to remind us, I was a Montessori kid, and the environment is considered one of the teachers. And sitting in our spaces on Zoom hasn't been working. So whether it's the coast or not, I think putting some thoughtfulness into what kind of space we embark on a chunky marathon of hours together is really important, including making sure that there's space for people to retreat to when that's necessary, because it's really hard to do this kind of work and then have to do every single level of processing in a communal space. That's really important for me to make sure. And I do recommend, I'm not sure, if it means asking one of you to come out here or what that means, but I do think that our limited time together has been really detrimental to us. And it's just one of the, add it to the list of tragedies of COVID. But I really do think that we're at a point in COVID. I know that we are all, having a relationship to COVID that has been very careful. And I think that the concept of the space, whether it's coast or not, is really crucial. I'd also be interested, I hear about the time commitment, but I'm interested in what that looks like in your mind, Monica, or whoever wants to answer that, in terms of like, is it all, working through hard questions? Is it about breaking bread? Is it about like, what do you envision that leads us to a place where we are able to, I remember being a little kid and driving over a bridge and being like so excited because you're about to go over it and you feel like you're going to see everything, and then you get on the bridge and there's these high walls and you can see nothing. So it's not just about building the bridge, but also about seeing the perspective that somehow we're not able to see from the very confined spaces that we're continuing to occupy.
Yeah, so I can't lay out like the exact design of the session of what it would look like. We would work together to set the goals for that time together. And I think what I will say is we ground the work together with reading that people do ahead of time and reflection. We give people, I agree with you completely, there's structure to it. So there are breaks when we need breaks, and there's time away and, and time together. And I would definitely recommend breaking bread together if you can. I can be there in person. Unfortunately, I came down with COVID in December, so I'm feeling more comfortable traveling myself. I don't know how others feel, but what I would say is that, there's an arc to the time together. Over the course of 2 days, I would expect you both to get to know each other better as each of you individuals, to be able to really get to know individual priorities and purpose, and then develop a sense of like shared purpose and understanding of your role as a single unit. And I would hope that over the course of 2 days, you would walk away with a few key decisions around shared, like rules of engagement, shared agreement around how you work together. So nothing about the time together is connected to work you have to do as a board, decisions you have to make. It's all about just your ways of working. And by the end of 2 days, you should be really a lot more clear about what each of you needs to be a productive and successful participant on the board, and how, and the things each of you are agreeing to take on together to support that. I would, and also just a sense of like kind of what you want to do next. So I won't have too specifics, but I think that's in general kind of the vision of from what I see. But we have to talk, first the board has to make a decision about whether or not they want to do this, and then and the board needs to say what you want to walk away with. And then we work to collaboratively design that with the board. So there's no surprises. You don't get there and suddenly, things are happening. It's something that exactly what's going to happen and what to expect throughout.
So then I have a follow-up question. It's my understanding that you and Judy and our district council met today. If we aren't talking about board business, can this count as one of those like things that we can do without declaring a public meeting? Did that get decided, or is there still uncertainty around that?
Do you want to answer, Judy?
Yeah, I think in talking to council that I think the way Monica's framing it as we really have to be very, very clear about, we can't talk about things that we're going to be talking about at all. Not our work. It would be interactions and not, and Christine had said, once we had the outline, she would definitely sit down with Monica if she was going to be the leader of it, to be sure about the parameters, and that, so she would be very clear and coach us what we can and can't do.
So I assume we can share like our puppy pictures and things like that, but
Oh yeah, no,
not talk about, what's going to happen with such and such an agenda item.
right.
Yeah.
And we can use hypothetical scenarios completely unrelated to education, even if we needed to work through an example. So, yeah.
And the reason we met, just to be clear, was really around understanding what the rules are for executive session for the superintendent search. So the timing just worked out, well, but, I think Christine, the general counsel, is really very clear about, what the rules are in the state of Oregon, what can be done, what is required to be done as a public meeting. And so she would make sure that the board, everyone understands what it is that we can't do it. We can't do it as a non-public meeting if it doesn't meet those rules. So we'd have to follow her guidance as we're designing it, or you will have to follow her guidance as you're designing it. Laurel?
Yeah, I mean, the policy is pretty clear. Just to follow up with the part you said, it just says we can't discuss anything to do with the district, but we absolutely can meet together. We just don't, just in case. I guess policy talk just falls out of our mouth. I wanted to talk about, I see the importance of this, and I mean, I regularly work about 60-hour weeks. And I am willing to take my free time and put it towards this, because this is what we showed up to do, and this is important, and I want to be, I'm excited of the thought of, and I think you and Maya said this really well, we've been missing the part where we get to connect as human beings. It really hasn't happened at any point, because we've all just been surviving in our little Brady Bunch boxes. And I really would love I would like people to understand me better, and I love people. I don't know why, but I still love humanity. And I would love to understand the people I'm working with more. So, and I think it could be, I wouldn't say a magic elixir, but it could be definitely the catalyst for making this work easier. So I definitely see it. And I do appreciate, there's been so many times when people are like, I need you to just go fix yourselves. And I'm on other boards, and I've heard other people say that, not to me, but to, to staff, we just fix it. And I'm like, you got to give them more than that. What's the why? So you adding the fact that we do this work and we can help and we can be there, I think it's exciting. Yeah, I just know this is not easy for everybody, and several of us have, full-time jobs and time constraints. But I just wanted to put out there that while it sounds overwhelming, I think it's important enough, and it's a snapshot of time. We won't be doing it every month. So thank you.
Thanks, Laurel. Mary?
Well, thank you. It sounds like we've made a decision. I thought we were going to wait and hear from our other two board members. So that kind of concerns me that we're already making plans. So make opinions, please. And then I'm going to wonder what burden this is going to put on staff if we're expecting them to set it up. And then number 3, I think the optics of the board going away on a junket to the coast are really bad at this point, given that we're in negotiations with our unions, and that I just think we should do it within the 4J district. There's plenty of places that we can have it. So if we do indeed have it, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't think any decision's been made. Maya was asking me what the approach would be, so I was sharing broadly what it looked like. I'm not sure if the coast was a serious suggestion or not, but you guys can decide that on the 16th, and also decide who you want there with you and whether you want to do this. All of those things I think you're saying still need to be discussed with the full board. Right.
So do you think we're at a stopping point? Are there any other comments from people at this point? I think just to summarize that, I will definitely ask Gordon and Alicia to listen to this meeting, and we will figure out where on the 16th we will have this conversation and make a decision. And maybe even if we do, with some potential dates, if we do decide to do it. But other than that, I think we might be at a point to end the meeting, unless there was something else on the agenda from the ALMA group.
Nothing else for us. We really appreciate, as always, just the ability to talk things through and continue to see the reflectiveness of each of you and really wanting to figure this out. So thank you for the opportunity and for being in the conversation. And I'll look forward to seeing what happens from here.
I think Maya has her hand up.
I just want to make it clear to our listening audience, and Laurel, forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think the notion of the coast was made mostly to bring levity to the situation and not as a serious request. It was more of a question of coming into a space where we can have our personal selves come forward, and not, in a high school cafeteria or whatnot. There are lots of opportunities and lots of options for us locally without any sort of sense of misuse of funds or whatnot. And I think that the way that it's being described, it sounds like it will be hands-off staff-wise, and that we can do a lot of the legwork without putting a huge burden on the staff. So I just want to reassure not only Mary, but the listening audience that we can do this type of work, carrying a lot of it on our own, and finding a way to reach each other without venturing far away or spending huge amounts of district funds.
I will still show you the coast if you want, though. I should have said Maui. That would have, I guess, made more sense.
Great, thank you. Martina.
I guess I just want to say before we close that, making obviously, I think making time for this is important. And also, I really feel like as a board, we're going to need to figure out how to prioritize some things and let some things take a little bit longer, let some things be pushed off a little bit, because we can't do all of it. Like we are genuinely running up against the actual problem of not having enough days or hours, and things get added a lot. And it's not to say that those things might not be important, but we just have to figure out how to like triage a little. I feel a lot of like strain and stress based on the amount of labor that we're doing. And you know, that is, Judy and I are leadership, and we spend additional hours every week, often a dozen extra hours a week or more. And it's really hard. And I want to name that and say that we're gonna have to make some compromises. And I would really like to feel comfortable that saying that is not going to, that's not going to be called lack of commitment or lack of caring, that's going to be understood as lack of capacity.
Thank you. As someone who does the calendar with you, I know there are only so many days, so we will come up with some ideas. Yeah. So any other comments from the group? Then I just want to thank our consultants. That was a hard conversation to have. I appreciate your honesty and communicating with us what you see and giving us this opportunity to discuss it with 5 of us anyhow tonight, and acknowledging that 2 board members aren't here. So we have a lot to think about for sure. And thank you, the whole fellow board members that were here, for sharing your honest feelings and responses to this as well. Appreciate it. And on that, I'm going to close this work session tonight at 7:02. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.